The Utah Utes have been in the Big 12 for over a year, and we're in the start of year two. They've yet to win a home conference game. Is that going to change against ASU? I think so.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. My name is JT. We're still excited to be joined by CBS Sports' national college football writer, Shehan Jeyarajah, kind enough to sit down with me and talk a little bit of Utah Utes. We talk Utah versus ASU, Sam Leavitt versus Devon Dampier, and even a little bit of, hey, is the Big 12 going to be a multi-bid lead? And Shehan, when Utah was coming into the Big 12, there were a lot of expectations last year. Quarterback injuries obviously derailed that. But one thing we knew about Utah coming in was that Rice-Eccles Stadium is an incredibly hard place to play. Well, in league games, Utah is 0-5 at home, which is hard to fathom. They did beat Baylor in a non-conference game last year, so technically they've beaten a Big 12 team since they've been in the conference. But I think the biggest thing that needs to change, not just for them to get a win against Arizona State, but hey, really start to win these games against these good teams, is the Utah offense just has to continue to be better. Last time Utah played a good team, they only scored 10 points, Sean.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. And obviously they invested so much in turning things over this offseason, bringing in Jason Beck as offensive coordinator, Devon Dampier, a whole bunch of other guys. But I think you're right. I mean, they just have not handled these moments well. And especially in the Big 12, right, where you have so many teams that are similar talent. Now, the one team that is maybe not similar talent is the one that they played earlier this year. But like, you really have to take care of business at home. I think that, scheduling is such a big part of contending for Big 12 championships. And because again, when you go on the road, everybody, tends to take care of business on their home field. So I think that that's such a big first part, is just taking advantage of those opportunities. And like you said, Utah, for various reasons, has not done it to this point.
Yeah, in 3 of those 5 Big 12 conference home games, they've scored less than 15 points, which is crazy. The other 2 losses to ranked teams, they scored over 20 at BYU and Iowa State in there too. But, in all those matchups, the better quarterback has been on the opposite end. And we'll talk about Dampier a little more in a moment, Shehan, but I am curious. You cover college football nationally. You see all these teams. I do think Utah's good, right? They've beaten up on the bad teams, but against I don't just want to say a good team, because I think Tech's great. Like, I think Tech is an argument to be one of the best teams in the country right now. I think they are clearly the class of the Big 12. I think Utah's good. I like the O-line. They're top 18 actually in offense and defense in a points per game basis. But do you think this Utah team's good? And how good, if you do think so, are they?
Yeah, I do think that they're definitely good. I think that they are right on the edge of that top 25 for me right now. If I pulled up my own personal rankings, I think that they're at like probably 31 or something like that. But, very much within striking distance, very much to me in the Big 12 conversation. I think that their offensive line has been what we expected, right? A really good group, 2 fantastic tackles, veterans on the interior. Defensively, this team's been really good. Maybe like half a step behind what we expected this year, but that's probably the most. And Texas Tech, like you said, I almost throw out that game, because I think that Texas Tech right now is a top 3 to 5 team in the country. I think that they have a very legitimate chance, I think, to go undefeated this year in the regular season. So I throw out that game a little bit. But I think with Utah, like, again, you've seen some of the good, you've seen some of the bad. You've seen, when Devon Dampier was asked to pass the ball a whole lot, he wasn't really able to step up and do that. That was certainly my big concern coming into the year against really high level competition. But you have seen the running game has given this team much more of a floor than what they've had in recent years. So still very much think that this is a good team. I think they're going to match up very well with everybody else on the rest of their schedule. They just happen to get probably the toughest team in the Big 12, not even probably the toughest team in the Big 12 in their first game.
You mentioned you have Utah at about 31 right now. Are they in your top 5 currently in the Big 12, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Thinking through it, again, Tech being there, I think that sort of in that next group, you sort of put BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State. I think that Utah probably is that 5th team right there. Now, there's other competition, right? TCU, I think, has looked really good. I don't think that I'm out on Baylor as yet. So, like, there's other teams pushing for it. But I think that, right now I would have them probably around 5 in my Big 12 grouping.
It's just so interesting to me how many college football teams, like I think Utah and BYU, both the top two teams in Utah, right? Like we don't know much about them, I feel like, because I could argue BYU's resume is as weak as anyone's in the top 25. Like, and I think BYU has already been a little better than I thought maybe, but I also thought they would win all these games so far. I didn't think they were great against a Colorado, took care of business against West Virginia. I don't think West Virginia is going to end up being very good. And like we said with Utah, like you've blown out these bad teams, although how bad is UCLA now? Maybe that win will look a little better once they get to the end of the year based on what happened against Penn State. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, they know. I think they still are. But I mean, what do you think? Like, is this weird that we don't know in some ways things about these teams this far into the season, or do you think this is just kind of normal with the way college football schedules get structured?
Well, it's so hard to know, right, year over year who's going to be good. We were having a bit of this discussion, even when it comes to the elite teams, right? I think everybody's very quick to point to the AP poll being wrong about the top 5, but like if you look at the advanced metrics, like a lot of this stuff was very wrong heading into the year, right? With a Texas, a Clemson, a Penn State, like it's just harder than ever, I think, to predict some of this stuff. Now, you add on top of that, yes, there are teams like, for example, with BYU, we knew that their non-conference slate was going to be easy. We knew Texas Tech's non-conference slate was going to be easy. And I think that what is a little unique this year, though, in the Big 12 specifically, is that last year for sure, and maybe even the year before that, there's been no bottom tier really of the Big 12. Everybody has been bowl competitive at worst, right? Like I think that everybody
Oklahoma State?
Well, no, last year.
Last year. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Heading into the year, right now,
Yeah.
obviously Oklahoma State kind of fell apart down the stretch last year, but like I think that this year there's a legit bottom tier of the Big 12 that's like near the bottom of everybody else. Oklahoma State, who you mentioned, really bad. I think West Virginia really, really struggling right now. UCF, I don't think is very good, right? So like I think that actually changes it and almost makes it so that you're playing more of those lower quality games to start the year where there's actually sort of like sub Big 12 level competition through the first half of the year. Now, the other thing that I'll mention as well is that schedule has never been more important than in college football than it is right now, because again, you look at even let's go 2 years ago where Oklahoma State wins 10 games and makes it to the Big 12 title game. It's because they had the easiest schedule in the conference. When you look at the teams in the Big 12 right now that I kind of view as some of my favorites, it's because Texas Tech has one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12. BYU has one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12. So like it's going to play a bigger role heading forward because we just have such gigantic conferences at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy how large these conferences are. And you mentioned a little earlier, like in some ways you throw out the Tech game. I was surprised that Utah wasn't able to win the line of scrimmage a little bit more in that game. But the more I watch Tech play, the more I think, look, maybe Utah's not a top 3 offensive line in the country, but I still think they're probably top 10, right? I think that Tech D line might be one of the best in the country too. So it sounds like you still have that confidence in this Utah offensive line too.
Oh, absolutely. Again, like this is a really, really good Texas Tech defensive line. David Bailey, Romello Height, Lee Hunter, Skylar McGill-Howard, like those are all guys who could be picked in the top 75 picks of the 2026 NFL draft. Like this is what they signed up for, right? Like this is what they did. Now, like you said, I was hoping that Utah's offensive line would hold up a little better, but I mean, I will say too, I feel like some of the problems and we kind of heard after the fact, maybe Devon Dampier is dealing with some injuries, but like, I do feel like the limitations that they had passing the ball made it worse for the offensive line as well. They became predictable. Texas Tech was able to add more guys to the box. So I think that that's even something you have to add on top of it as well, is that, again, just in that particular game plan and that particular moment, Utah's offensive line was put in a very difficult position, and there's really no other teams on the schedule that will put them in that level of position.
No, I totally agree. I think BYU's D line's good, but they're not Lee, some of those guys, Hunter, like I said, all the Bailey, like those are dudes. I like you put it best. Like it's when you say it out loud, it's kind of crazy that all 4 of those guys could be top 75 NFL draft picks. But I think you're absolutely right. So, and Utah obviously has 2 pretty good offensive tackles, which is going to help them against Arizona State this weekend. But who has the better quarterback in this matchup, and how will each one perform in Rice-Eccles Stadium? We're breaking it down in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks. When it's good to be right, you can get rewarded with Prize Picks. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement of football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I mean, I love how quickly you can make your lineup in just under a minute too. Also, Prize Picks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And their new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps and no spaces, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right with Prize Picks. Devon Dampier and Sam Levitt are both incredibly fun quarterbacks, dual threat quarterbacks. Going into this game, Levitt is better than Dampier right now. But I will say, Shehan, I think there is a world where Dampier is the better quarterback on Saturday. Could you see that?
I can see that for sure. I think that there's a couple pieces of this, right? One, I think that that this is certainly not the same level of overall defensive run, especially in the run game defensive line, that what they saw against Texas Tech. And I expect that they're going to struggle a little bit more to set the edge. When you look at Arizona State, CJ Fight is kind of their big guy in the middle of the line. Very, very good player. But they don't necessarily have that same level of, especially hand in the dirt, edge player that Texas Tech had. So I think that Utah's offensive line is going to be able to create more opportunities for Devon Dampier, the runner. And I think that's going to open up the passing game. We saw, obviously, the very next week against West Virginia that Dampier looked a lot more comfortable throwing the football against a more overmatched defense. And while Arizona State is certainly a step up from that, I don't think that necessarily this is a fearsome group that's going to be able to shut down this offense. And for Levitt, I mean, it's been interesting because Jordan Tyson at receiver is the best receiver in the Big 12, I think by a pretty wide margin, frankly. But after him, they've been kind of forgettable at receiver. And you've seen Sam Levitt struggle in some of these games and some of these moments when he can't just find Tyson on the field. You see, they play 2 straight games against good Baylor and TCU teams. It goes down to the final field goal that they kick to win each game. But like, their offense has kind of been a little bit of a mess in the passing game. I don't think Levitt's lived up to that billing to this point. And again, if they're able to protect Dampier at a high level, and again, give him a little bit more ability to escape, I think that makes for a pretty favorable matchup for this Utah offensive line.
I totally agree. Let's go back to Levitt real quick, because I have been so fascinated, Shehan, by all the preseason quarterback hype nationally, just for everyone, and how that list now looks like a few weeks in the season. Drew Aller, Nussmeier, Klubnik, and Levitt, another guy who was thrown around in the top 10, even top 5 in some ways. And it has been up and down. I absolutely agree. I mean, they don't have another receiver who's over 200 yards on the season. Like, that's outside of Tyson, another pass catch. Like, that is insane to think about this far into the year. He's got the 61st ranked QBR. He's obviously not the 61st best quarterback in college football, but is this a top 10 quarterback coming into Salt Lake City? And let's not forget, the last time ASU came up to Utah, it was 55-3. A much better ASU team, but I still think Levitt's going to have to be really good for them to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think to go back, right, like you said, to 23-24, Levitt coming in has been transformational for this team, just in the way that you have to defend this Arizona State team with his escapability. Because, they had been a little inconsistent on the offensive line, and adding a quarterback of that caliber, I think, changed a lot. But is he a top 10 quarterback? I mean, it's rated, like you said, as high as number 4 by some places. No, I think that he has been probably a top 25 to 30 quarterback in college football to this point. Not bad, but not necessarily somebody who's changing a whole lot for you either. I think just in the Big 12 alone, right? You look at Rocco Becht, you look at Sawyer Robertson, you look at Josh Hoover. I mean, there's a very legitimate chance. Jalen Daniels is playing really well right now. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that make it tough to even definitively say he's a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12 right now. Now, the Big 12, I think, is the best quarterback conference, at least at this moment, but still, that's saying a lot. So He's a very good player. I think that in some ways he's been failed by the players around him outside of Jordan Tyson, but you also see these moments where he's making bad decisions, where he's being inaccurate with the ball, where he's running when maybe he would be better off throwing. Like, he's still trying to figure out his life a little bit after Cam Skattebo went to the NFL. And while I think that he will figure it out by the end of the year, he's still working through that process heading into this weekend.
He is. It's funny you mentioned all those Big 12 quarterbacks too, and you didn't get to Avery Johnson because it's been a rough year for Avery Johnson. Kansas State,
yeah.
That's what's crazy is all these quarterback rankings. Johnson was a guy a lot of people were high on Kansas State, thought maybe he'd be a Heisman sleeper too. So it's just been wild. And, some people were saying Devon Dampier was more of a deep, like Heisman, maybe finalist to top. I said top 10 even. I thought, and I still think he has a chance to get there. It would take a lot, but like you said, Shehan, too, like it's just hard against Tech because Tech is this amazing team, but then you haven't played any good teams either. I feel like Devon Dampier has grown as a passer, right? 12 picks last year, 3 so far this year. He just hasn't forced the ball as much so far. I think definitely there was probably something there with the ankle, but also, like you mentioned, the quality of the defense definitely had something to say about that since he looked a lot better against a much worse team the following week too. I've liked what I've seen from Devon Dampier. I feel like there's growth. He's making less turnover-worthy plays. So hopefully got the ankle healthy over the bye week too. What have you made of his play so far this season?
Yeah, I think he's been very solid. I think he's been very good. I think he's been pretty much what was hoped and expected to a large extent. I still think back to, that UCLA game and the way that he was just in total command of that game. He looked like the best player on the field for most of that game. And it wasn't just that he obviously is a dynamic athlete, though that's huge. It's also that he made great decisions. It's also that, again, as a runner too, like I think they were very deliberate with how they used him. And my big question also, like I said, I had questions about the drop back passing, still a little concerned about that. But, again, this unit isn't built necessarily, and this offense isn't necessarily built around true drop back passing with too much consistency, right? Like, he's going to be on the move more often than not, even when he is passing the football. And I think that in those moments, he stood up really well. I was also worried that he was maybe a little bit more of a freelancer type quarterback than he was a structure type quarterback. Well, I think that through these first couple of games, he's played really well in structure when the offense has dictated him to be able to do so. So I think that he looks right now definitely like a top half quarterback in the Big 12. Like you said, I mean, I think his numbers are going to be really good at the end of the year. He's going to have a case for an all Big 12 team, but it's just a very competitive year, and I'm fascinated to see how it worked itself out.
It is competitive, and it's interesting. He's got interesting weapons as well, right? There was a lot of hype about it. Tobias Merriweather coming into this year. He has less than 100 yards receiving on the season. I still think him and Dampier will connect on at least a couple big plays this year, but Ryan Davis, clearly your number one guy, and it does feel like that chemistry is so big that they were able to build last year at New Mexico. Tight ends are back at Utah. Dallin Bentley's been a lot of fun to watch for this team. Backup J.J. Buchanan's made a couple of splash plays too, but like you said, Shehan, I don't feel like Utah needs these receivers to go absolutely crazy. Utah has won Pac-12 titles before with, tight ends making some plays, but the biggest thing being a quarterback doing some stuff with his legs. Just Cam made some plays in the run game more than anything else. It doesn't feel like Utah needs to have like 2,000-yard receivers, even two guys who go over 800 yards in order to contend in the Big 12 because they're still going to run the ball well and they're going to play defense. Sounds like a Kyle Whittingham championship level style to me.
Yeah, no question about it. And, I remember talking to Coach Whittingham before the year, and that was one of the things that he said was that we felt like this system in its modern form is a return in some ways to what Urban Meyer and those offenses looked like, right? Some of the power spread type stuff. And I think that you've seen some of that DNA. Probably one of the things that I've been most impressed by with Utah to this point is I think that they've handled kind of playing with different tempos better than I expected, right? Because, I mean, especially at New Mexico, so much of the time you're just turning things up, trying to produce as much as possible. Well, I think that they've showed with their personnel and with their offensive line, we can slow things down and still run some of those concepts, and they're going to have a chance to be effective as well. So I've really liked what I've seen so far. I think, again, it's been what we hoped to this point. But again, it's going to be a fascinating test heading into the heart of Big 12 play, especially against a team like Arizona State, how it holds up.
It will be. How about New Mexico this year, by the way? Jason Eck? Oh my
Fun
gosh.
stuff, man. Fun stuff. It still kills me that they went from an OC named Jason Beck to a coach named Jason Eck.
Yeah.
But no, I've been very impressed by them because not a lot was left over from that New Mexico team whenever Bronco and Jason Beck left that program. They've done a fantastic job bringing some guys in, and this looks like a pretty formidable team in the Mountain West.
They do. Their best, like all their best offense is either with Utah now. Arizona got their receiver. I think USC has one of their backs. Like it's crazy what happened. The transfer portal era just leads so much change. It's part of the reason we see a Tech team able to turn around their defense so quickly and create one of the best D lines in college football. This is Tech's league right now. But is there going to be another Big 12 team that's going to crack the college football playoff party? That's what we're going to discuss in one moment. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football, NFL, it's so back, and we couldn't be more excited, right? I mean, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. I mean, that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is genuinely what you pay. I mean, I pulled up Game Time, and literally this year, I went to a college football game, P4, for less than $10. That's what you can do. Go find the tickets, the deals today. It's all there at Game Time. They even give you a panoramic view from your seat. You can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's sports bars dedicated to your team's fan base, the spots with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. I mean, for me, there's a coffee shop I go to almost every Saturday. They know my order there. They know my name. It just makes it even feel better too when you're supporting those people who go the extra mile for you. And that's what small businesses do. And Square is proud to partner with more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedon, square.com/go/lockedoncollege, all caps, no spaces, to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, we'll see you in the neighborhood. Big 12's multi-bid college football playoff chances definitely took a hit with Iowa State losing, but also the ACC has been a mess so far this year. SMU isn't going to make it there, I don't think. So Clemson has been basically, I mean, the best way to sum it up so far. I still think it's possible for the Big 12 to get multiple teams in, but margin for error has definitely gone down, John.
No question about it. And there are two developments that I think are huge for the Big 12. One is Notre Dame slipping. I think that them being a 10-2 team makes it much more likely that an 11-1 Big 12 team has a chance, even if that team loses in the Big 12 championship game. So that's definitely not a small development. When you kind of, I guess, parse out the numbers so much of the time, you think 4 Big 10, 4 SEC, then potentially 3 between the Big 12 and ACC. Well, all of a sudden, if the ACC is not producing a second one, and then on top of that, Notre Dame's not in the picture, that opens up a spot. The other thing as well is that I mentioned it a little bit off the top, but when the Big 12 has a legitimate, I guess you could call it underclass, it makes it a lot more manageable for more of these teams to get to 10 or 11 wins. And I think that you saw, for example, last year with the ACC, and this is, by the way, this also goes in line with only having 8 conference games. That's a whole other thing. But whenever you have a group of teams that really is just struggling, it creates more opportunities and wins for the upper middle class teams in your league. So again, in a year like last year, you have SMU going through, not having to play essentially any of the other contenders in that conference. Well, that wasn't the case in the Big 12 last year. All these teams had to go and play each other. This year, though, you have some of these top level teams that maybe only play 1 or 2 of the other contenders. The two, to me, again, Tech is what it is, right? Yes. Like, I think that they're pretty much locked in. But BYU plays a game at Tech. Other than that, again, that Utah game is probably going to be a huge swing game for both of these programs, right? So if they manage to win that game, they're in good position. I think same with Utah, right? Utah plays BYU, they play Arizona State. They already lost to Tech, but if you handle business and you're an 11-1 team, I think they're in good position. There are so many teams right now that I think have a pathway to Arlington at 10-1 if they just take care of business. And I don't think that a 2-loss Big 12 team is in very good shape. A 1-loss, I think, is fine.
What about in the Big 12 title game? If they lose that game, I know you've kind of talked about that
not counting that game as the second
Yeah.
loss. So because again, SMU last year was 11-1. Now there's a whole other conversation about how BYU probably deserves a little more credit for that win that they had in the non-conference, but that's a whole other conversation. But again, I think that in reality, an 11-1 team that picks up a second loss in a conference title game will be compared favorably, especially if it's to a team that was not in a conference championship game.
You mentioned BYU. I don't know. Maybe I'm being the Utah guy and I'm just going to be late to the party. I just don't see it yet. Like, I don't see a top 20 team. Maybe they will be top 25, like the defense. Bear has shown me some things. I just have major questions till they play good teams, and they're going to get a lot of them coming up. Do you think this BYU team, I don't know if they're a 10-win team, but do you see them as an 8-9 win team right now?
Well, I think so. And again, I mentioned that schedule. Like, Utah is a huge game for them. Texas Tech is a huge game for them. I think they'll be favored by 5+ points in almost every other game that they play. So their pathway is very manageable to me, even frankly, if they lose those two games. Yeah. But the other thing too is that I really like their playmakers on offense. They haven't necessarily leaned on them a whole lot to this point, but Chase Roberts is a big time player. You got to see Parker Kingston in this last game. He had a huge breakaway touchdown. Both those guys finished with over 100 yards. We haven't even seen Tiger Bachmeier yet, the brother of Bear Bachmeier. They've got some tight ends they're really excited about. Defensively, this team is really, really good. I mean, their linebacker combo, Jack Kelly, they're one of their two great linebackers dealing with an injury right now. But I think that Isaiah Glasker is as good as any defender in the Big 12 right now. So they're a team that's going to be led by their defense, but I think that the biggest thing that if you're a BYU person, you have to be excited about is that you have so much time to figure things out before you head into that October 18th game that's going to define a lot of seasons.
You're right. Even this week they get Arizona, and I know Fafita can do some things, but I still think that Arizona team is great. We talked about some of the lower teams in this conference. I think maybe Colorado can go in there too, right? Along with the BYU, West Virginia, or not BYU, excuse me, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Maybe BYU will be there. We'll see. But one thing I do think it's interesting in this conference is you have Cincinnati. And even a team like Kansas State to me could be this year's Kansas, where they knock themselves out of really anything they wanted to do, but they could just be a giant slayer and go in and knock a bunch of other teams off too. I definitely feel like we're going to see a lot of these teams that end up with 2 or 3 losses because it's the Big 12. And that's what happens.
100%. And again, like when I talk about behind Tech, like nobody is head and shoulders above, right? Like I think that Iowa State, I think they're still fine. Obviously, the game against Cincinnati was not a great moment for them, but like, again, they're not so far above everybody else that you can just put those games away. And in fact, to talk about Tech for just 1 second, this was one of the things that I think people ask me a lot, like, yeah, obviously you do this to try to win games, but like, why did they put so much onto raising their floor? And the reality is 6 of their 8 wins last year were by 1 score. Well, the point is they don't want to be in 6 1-score games this year, right? They want to play 2 or 3 competitive games and try to go 2-1 in them, and that's going to get them to Arlington, right? And I think that for a lot of these other teams that just, don't have that level above, it's going to be a bit more competitive. Now, Utah's an interesting team because I could see with their trench play for them to be sort of a head above the field sort of situation, right? To be able to just bully teams that are lesser than them. And that, I think, gives you opportunities. Iowa State, of course, not one of those teams. They're not a team that can just physically put you to sleep. So that I think that's going to be a big part of emerging. That's what I see in Utah. That's what I see in BYU. That's what I'm curious about with a team like Arizona State. Can they hang in those kind of situations? But, again, I think that the teams that are strongest in the trenches will have the best chance to emerge from that group.
I totally agree. And that's why I'm glad Utah can be a contender because of that trench talent, even if, as you mentioned, Tech's trench talent might be too much for anyone in this conference to touch right now. But Shehan, appreciate you making the time to come on. Please let everyone know where they can find your stuff at.
Yeah, you can find all my work at cbssports.com. You can follow me on all social media at Shehan Jeyarajah, and you can listen to our podcast, The College Football Insiders, wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you so much for coming on, Shehan.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be coming back tomorrow talking about the latest in Utah football as they gear up for this massive clash against Arizona State in Salt Lake City.